This is a story of how I got CPS called on my parents. So when I was younger, me and my siblings would go outside and pick up walnuts in our yard. We were paid by our parents because we had giant walnut trees that would frequently, obviously, drop these walnuts. And my parents didn't want to mow over the walnuts because that's not good for mowers, apparently. So they paid us to go pick them up. So for every 5-gallon pail we filled, we got some money. And I've always been a little bit worrisome with money, always have had some anxiety around money, and this happened to me even when I was a kid in second grade. So going to go find these walnuts, pick them up for money was something I actively participated in to make sure I had enough money, for the rest of my life. Because as much as I didn't understand money, I still respected it. I was impatient one day because I had picked up so many walnuts and none have fallen off the trees yet. Me being so impatient, but yet so innovative at a young age, led me to what I like to call speeding up the process. So in my pasture, we had these salt blocks that we would feed the cattle, obviously, to, even actually get their sodium intake up. It was good for them. Sometimes I licked it too, but that's not the point of this story. Anyways, I was in the pasture trying to find this salt block, and I was running around sneakily because my mom was in the pasture with me because she was, how do I put this gently, cutting off the heads of our chickens with a big ass axe. Side note, if you ever seen a chicken run around with its head cut off, traumatizing as a young kid. Anyways, I eventually found the salt block that I was going to use to throw up into the air. So salt blocks come in a huge cube, which weigh so much. There's no way as a second grader I was picking up the entire salt block. So what I did was picked up a smaller piece that had broken off of this salt block that was probably about the size of a baseball, fit right in my hand, and I could throw straight up in the air, hoping to knock some walnuts off a tree. Genius. What could go wrong? So I took the salt block and I found a walnut tree, and I found the perfect walnut that I was going to knock off this tree. I took the salt block, threw it straight up in the air, and watch as it came straight back down. And since I was a big idiot, I didn't move. Yeah, it missed the walnuts and hit me right on top of the head. I was so embarrassed, more embarrassed than literally anything. It didn't even hurt me. I was just like, wow, I really pray, and I really pray that no one saw me freaking throw the salt block up in the air and that it came back down and hit me in the head. So I was like, you know what? I have to leave the crime scene. I have to get out of here before someone notices. So I immediately left the pasture, and I was like, good. I don't think anyone saw me do that, thankfully. And as I'm leaving, I run into my little sister, Chloe, and she looks at me and starts screaming bloody murder. And I was like, what the fuck? So I'm looking behind me to try to see what is making her act so crazy, she had just seen a ghost or I don't know, Godzilla. And that's when I noticed something. I look at my shoulder, and on my jean jacket is just blood. And I was like, oh, blood. And I take both my hands and I feel on top of my head, and I pull my hands back down in front of my face, and they are just covered in warm, sticky red blood. Great. Yeah, my sister's screaming bloody murder. I'm just pouring blood out the top of my head, and I'm like, oh shit. So my parents come and find us because obviously Chloe is yelling so loud. I swear to God, everyone within 3 miles probably heard her, and they come and they find me. So they see me. Now, my mom's also freaking out now because I'm bleeding from the top of my head, gushing down my sides. And they're like, oh, fuck. We got to bring her into the emergency room. And I lived out in the country, so the closest emergency room was probably a 15-20 minute drive. So it was a matter of, well, what's wrong with her? Do we need to call an ambulance, or do we just drive her in? And my parents were like, let's just drive her in. But, I don't want to get blood all over my minivan, the Honda Odyssey. Thank you, Mom. So she's like, let's clean her up before we bring her into the emergency room. So they brought me inside and put me in the sink, head over into the sink, and scrubbed the top of my head. And that's when my stepdad dad found a huge gash in my head that was just like pouring out the blood. So they're just scrubbing my scalp, getting all the blood out so I didn't look like Carrie, and put me in different clothes. And then we were off to the hospital. Immediately they were like, Bella, what happened? Like, what did you do to your head? What's going on? I did not want to admit that I threw a salt block up into the air and then let it hit me on the head. So what did I say? What did I do? I said, I don't know. Foolproof plan, right? Yeah, what could go wrong? My parents just immediately assumed that I was concussed, so they continued to bring me to the hospital. When I got to the emergency room, we walked in, and they're like, why are you here? Obviously, fill out this paperwork. And then they were like, my daughter has a giant gash in her head. And they were like, oh, okay, take a seat. We then sat in the emergency room for 3 hours waiting to go back to see a doctor. And I was like, oh my God, that was annoying. That was honestly the longest I ever had to wait in an emergency room before, and my head was cracked open. Whatever, thank you. So eventually I do get pulled into the back to finally get seen. And of course they look at my head and they go, what happened? What happened? And I, still unwilling to admit that I did it to myself, kept saying, I don't know. Foolproof plan. And when you get hit in the head, there's a few different things they go through. Obviously, they check to see if you're concussed. They do this, and that. I didn't have a concussion. So they were like, she's not concussed, but yet she doesn't know what happened to her. So what did they do? They immediately separated me and my parents. Yeah, so I did not really understand what was happening. I was just like, oh, they're just gonna go talk to my mom and dad, but joke's on them. They don't fucking know what's happening either. I'm the only one that really knows. And the doctors just kept asking me. They're like, if someone in your family did this to you, you can tell us, like, you're safe, you're not gonna get in trouble. And I was like, oh, I don't know, I don't remember what happened. And they were like, was it your sister? You can tell us if it was your sister, she's not gonna get in trouble. Did your parents do this to you? If so, which one? They're not gonna get in trouble. Like, we just want you to be honest with us so we can make sure, like, you're safe or whatever. And I was too far gone. I was too far fucking gone to admit it. What I had done now. I had talked to like 20 different people. I was still selling the fact that I did not know what happened to the top of my head, and they really were not buying it. Eventually, they let my parents come back in, and they seemed really confused and angry, and now they were trying to be like, Bella, if someone did this to you, tell us. And they were talking to us as like a family, and they were like kind of attacking my parents too. I kind of remember they're like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, where was she? Well, she was in the pasture. Well, what were you guys doing? And my mom's like, well, I was cutting the heads off of chickens with a giant axe. Yeah, they didn't love that one. So eventually, they fixed up my head and sent me on my way. And we were leaving the hospital. We're driving back home. And my parents are still like, Bella, what happened? And I'm still selling the fact that I did not know. So 2nd grade, crazy me, and everyone's like, okay, so then what happened? Well, about 2 Thanksgivings ago, I was sitting at the table with my entire family, and I was like, this conversation has not been about me enough. I want to talk. I want to be the star. Let me shine, please. And so I was like, okay, well, let me get their attention. How do I do that? Yeah, let me drop the secret of the century. And we were sitting there, and I was just like, just so you guys know, I do know what cracked my head open 12 years ago. Immediately, everyone was like, Bella! What happened? And then I explained how I threw a salt block up into the air and it came down and it cracked my head open, and that I was just too embarrassed to tell anyone. My mommy was so mad. Everyone else thought it was kind of funny, but then, my parents explained to me how those people who were talking to me were not doctors, but the Child Protective Services, and that I had a case file open for me for a very long time because they thought I was being abused at home. Because I just was too embarrassed to admit that I had done it to myself. But yeah, now it's a funny little bit every Thanksgiving. Parents are going to wonder if I'm going to drop another huge ass secret because, I've done a lot of stupid shit in my life and I haven't dropped anything else yet, but maybe soon. But yeah, that's the story of the time I got Child Protective Services, CPS, called on my parents. I think it's a fun one. If you want to hear more stories, let me know down below. Comment anything you want. In fact, if you're still here, comment, wow, Bella, you look so great in that sweatshirt. You should buy more. And thank you. I will buy more. I do love this sweatshirt. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe. And disclaimer, since we're at the end here, I'm not driving. Chad's driving. Say hi to Chad. I got some comments last time about how I should not do this and drive. I never drove. I have a chauffeur. But thank you so much for watching this freaking road trip story time. And I'll see you next time. Bye.